my first exposure to blaxploitation films, I think probably the first two times I ever kind of heard about black movies per se, like my first instances, is my parents went and saw Sweet Sweetback. And they couldn't take me, but they went and saw it, and then they came back and I heard them talking about it. And I remember, like, you know, I'd heard of the movie Sweet Sweetback. How old was I? I don't know, 4 or something like that. I'd heard of it. I'd seen the poster. I'd seen the picture, the big red letters and his face and the hat. Then I remember my mom saying, well, no, that's not really the title. The title is Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. And so she was like, so I heard of that movie. And then I remember watching the Johnny Carson show, and Richard Roundtree was on it. And Johnny Carson's, and we got an actor here. He's a star of a wild, wild, wild new movie. It's called Shaft. All right, and it's Richard Roundtree. And I remember as I got older, I go, what's so wild about Shaft? Is it the fact that it's a black guy? That's what makes it wild, wild, wild? Yeah, I think it's did wild 3 times. And then after that, boom, the explosion happened and stuff. And my first 100% big exposure to it, 100%, other than just seeing commercials on TV, because actually that was what was happening. I would like watch Soul Train and stuff and see these trailers on TV or listen to K-Day in Los Angeles, the rhythm and blues radio station out here, and they'd have all the radio spots and stuff. But at that time, in that part of the 70s, 74, 75, I didn't live in a black area, so none of the theaters were playing, none of the movies were playing around my house. They were just pretty much playing in the black areas. I'm not talking about Shaft, but other things. Nigger Charlie, something like that. That was just pretty much playing in the black areas. And so it was always pissing me off because I couldn't go see them. And then, two things, and I just left my train of thought. I totally lost my train of thought. I was gonna say something cool too. What was I gonna say? Oh, I know. Okay, here it is. Okay, let me start it over again. So I remember like I wanted to see the films and when the explosion happened in 73 and 74, but they weren't playing around my house because at the time I didn't live in a black neighborhood, so they weren't playing around me. So I'm like watching Soul Train on Saturday and seeing the trailers for that and listening to K-Day, which was the soul station out here in Los Angeles, and hearing the radio spots on there. But my mom was going out with like a lot of black guys at the time, all right? And one of them was this football player guy, I don't remember his name. And he was like, you know, dating a girl and yeah, she's got a young son, so you're gonna take him out for a day, all right, kind of show him around and be a good guy. So he bought me a football and bought me some boy kind of toy and took me down to downtown LA. And downtown LA at that time, that whole Broadway area with all the old theaters and everything, that was like a black Hollywood. It was like a black Westwood, all right? It was like all those big theaters all up and down the street. Every film was a blaxploitation film. Every film was a black film. And they had, you know, just like in Hollywood Boulevard, you know, they didn't have like the marquee with the name with the letters. No, they had a big, you know, the big thing there, a Hitman with a picture of, you know, Bernie Casey on it, and, you know, the Mac, and, you know, picture of Max Julien on the marquee. I mean, it was, you know, it was like the old days. But it was, I remember actually, I didn't know where I was, and he was driving down this street, and I felt like I was in a black world. Every theater was a blaxploitation film, except for one theater was showing Five Fingers of Death. That was the only one that wasn't a blaxploitation film. And so the film that we saw, he goes, well, which one you want to see? And I even love the fact that he took me, okay, I'm gonna take you out, all right? And he drives me up and down this street with like 9 theaters, all showing blaxploitation. Okay, which one you wanna see? And I don't even know who this guy is now, and I love him for that, all right? I will always love him for that. And I'd seen the trailers for Black Gun on TV, and it looked really good, all right? So I picked Black Gun. So Black Gun with Jim Brown and Luciana Paluzzi and Martin Landau, and is she gone? Yeah. The prettiest woman in blaxploitation is Brenda Sykes. Is she in relation to Wanda Sykes? It can't be. Can't be.
She's not.
I can't think so. That's what I saw, and it was playing with a movie called "Get Off the Bus" or
The Bus Is Coming.
The Bus Is Coming. Thank you. And it was funny. So I go into this theater, and these downtown LA theaters are huge. So he takes me up into the balcony. So we're sitting up there in the balcony, and The Bus Is Coming is playing, and everybody is talking through it, and they're making fun of everybody. They're like, "Oh, suck my dick! Oh, yeah, fuck you, motherfucker!" All right, all this shit is going on through it. I've never been in a theater where this was going on before. I mean, how old am I? I'm in 3rd grade, okay, maybe less, and I was like, "Wow, this is really kind of cool," and then Black Gun started, and then everyone shut up. No one was talking through Black Gun, all right? And I watched it, and I loved it, and I even remember the comments, all right? Some guy sitting behind me, all right? Like Jim Brown's like getting out of a car at the end of the movie, there's a little freeze frame on him, just his shoulders and his chest and his face, and freeze, credits roll, and this guy behind me. That's a movie about a bad motherfucker. That's a bad motherfucker right there. And I actually even had like a really kind of cool moment, and even just remembering that now, because I remember when I saw Jackie Brown at the Magic Johnson Theater. I'm sitting there, and there's this old black guy there, and after Sam Jackson shoots De Niro, he goes, "Damn, that Sam Jackson's just a badass motherfucker." So I got the experience again via my own thing, but so it was just great. And then we moved to Torrance, which is right next to Carson, which is the big black area. It's one of the biggest black areas in the South Bay area, all right? And there they had the Carson Twin Cinema, which showed nothing but blaxploitation movies and all the exploitation movies. All the kung fu films, all the stuff that was coming into town for a week, it played at the Carson Twin, and all the stuff that had been playing for months and was getting ready to leave would play at the Carson Twin. So you would have AIP's triple feature of JD's Revenge, Cornbread Earl and Me, and Cooley High. And then the next theater is like Star is Born, all right, which has been playing for 6 months, and this is its last week. If it's playing at the Carson Twin Cinema, that means it's on its way out of town. And it might even be playing there with a kung fu movie that the Exchange House just sent them, Soul Brothers Kung Fu with Carl Scott and Bruce Lee. And I loved it, and I went to see all of them every single solitary week, and I'd try to go. I'd go every Saturday and Sunday, and I'd go Saturday nights, and the reefer would be just flowing in the theater, and it was back when and the Crips were always there in a big show of force and everything, but the Crips were different in the 70s. I mean, there was we thought they were scary then, all right? But they were just kind of they kicked your ass, There was that kind of thing. If they were gonna do anything, that was in the days where hey, someone brought a gun to school, ooh, wow, ooh, ah, ah, ah. And that was like a big deal, ooh, wow. You didn't need metal detectors in the school in that day. And it wasn't like a $100 million drug, business that they were trying to support. They were just trying to look cool and tough. So it was a whole different thing. But that's how that was such a long answer. But but that was sort of my indoctrination into that world. That's very interesting. Do I have a hero?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe somebody like Clint Eastwood, who also has complete control of his work.
Yeah, I do. Clint Eastwood actually is kind of like I don't know. I mean, there's a very heroic aspect about Clint Eastwood that I've admired ever since I was a little kid. But Clint Eastwood kind of actually is like a role model, actually, to some degree.
More than a hero, yeah.
Yeah, than the way with his relationship with Warner Brothers. Yeah. All right, because. That's the kind of way I want to be able to work in this industry, and he's the business mode that I followed. When he does movies for Warner Brothers, he doesn't take a ton of money up front, all right? He makes the movies, and he makes them for a good price. So no matter what happens, the film will never really do bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It has every possibility of doing very good, all right, but no one will ever get really hurt by it. But now if it does really good, he's going to get his money at the end of the day, and he can trust that he will. That's the relationship that I have with Miramax. That's the relationship I have with Harvey Weinstein. That's always been my role model as far as dealing with them.
And your films are made Well, really very cheaply, aren't they? Jackie Brown cost, what, $12 million?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I mean, you can't lose from
That's
that, can you? I mean,
that's the idea.
you've got to be laughing all the way to the bank with it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like, you know, because the thing is, you know, Jackie Brown is more of a modest movie than Pulp Fiction, and thus its grosses are going to be more of a modest variety, you know. And so we do it for 12 million. We're going to end up doing very, very well with it. All right,
Yeah, sure,
you know,
yeah.
it doesn't have to be $100 million.
Tell you what is happening at the movies. And there's a happening out there now called The Hateful Eight. It is written and directed, and God knows what else he did, by the guy who has the creative motor that runs hottest in show business. I don't know anybody that can touch you for that, Quentin.
Oh, what a lovely compliment. Thank you so much, Mr.
Welcome. There
you
you
so
go.
much.
There you go. All right, we're done. So let's get to it.
Sure.
The Hateful Eight. What inspires it? What makes you say, I'm going to make this Western? This is what I'm going to do.
As much as I've been inspired by other movies, this one, in a weird way, was more inspired by a lot of the Western episodic TV shows of the 60s. In particular, shows like The Virginian and Bonanza and Big Valley and stuff like that. And the episodes I found myself gravitating towards and watching are the ones that had really cool guest stars on it. So like a Robert Culp or a James Coburn or a Charles Bronson. They all did, Vic Morrow, people like that. And I noticed that if Robert Culp was on an episode of The Virginian, the story was about him. It was about Robert Culp's character. It wasn't about James Drury. It wasn't about Doug McClure. They were in the episode, but the story was about Robert Culp. And he would come into town, and he'd be this stranger. You didn't know who he was, and you still didn't know who he was for a while. But then usually some past was revealed about the character, and you didn't know how true it was or how not true it was. And you didn't know if the character was a good guy or a bad guy. And it wasn't usually revealed until towards the end. And there was a moral ambiguity about the character. You didn't know at the end of that Virginian episode if Doug McClure and Robert Culp would be friends or if Doug McClure would end up killing him at the end of the episode. And I thought that was a very interesting place to jump off for a character. And I go, what if I did a movie starring nothing but those guys?
Those guys.
Take 8 of those guys that you're not quite sure about, and there's some moral ambiguity about them, and they all have a past that kind of taints them to some degree or another.
Yeah, you've done the good, the bad, and the ugly without the good.
Without the good.
Without the good. They're
exactly,
gone.
yeah. And then trapping those characters together in one room and just having them hash it out.
So they are hateful.
Oh, they are definitely
are.
hateful. I mean, I think some are slightly more likable than others, but nevertheless, they are hateful. And there is no good guy. There is no hero. There is no moral center for the audience to gravitate towards. Now, I think you do gravitate towards some of them, but that's all on you. Mm-hmm. And I don't make it easy for you, but I think it happens nevertheless.
Yeah, just because I might say Daisy Darmague is somebody I gravitate towards.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might not say it. Somebody else would say
No,
something
and what's
else.
neat about that, though, is if John Ruth is your character, or if Daisy Darmague is your character, or if Chris Mannix is your character. Well, if 3 different people have those 3 different choices, all 3 of you have had 3 slightly different viewing experiences, depending on the character that you gravitated towards.
Talk a little about these characters and these actors, because this is an amazing group that you put together
Yeah, I
in here,
think so.
starting with Sam Jackson.
Well, you know, Sam Jackson has appeared in probably in one degree or another in more of my movies than any other actor. And there's really nobody who says my dialogue the way Sam Jackson does. I think we have one of the most fruitful and rewarding relationships between actor and director in cinema. As much as it's fun to work with him as a director, I really do think it's the way he interprets my material as a writer. That really is the key to our relationship. There's an aspect to my dialogue where it's not poetry, but there's a poetic quality to it. It's not,
It can be musical.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not writing songs, but there is a musical quality to it. It's not stand-up comedy, but there is a comedic rhythm to it. And he gets all those notes. He turns it into the poetry. He turns it into the music. He turns it into the almost Richard Pryor routines, all right, that is required of him in a way that nobody else does.
And what are you saying about race when you use Sam Jackson? You used him in Django in a really interesting way.
Yeah, I think
when
so, too.
When he was here, I was asking him about that because that character is truly hateful.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Oh, he absolutely is. I actually remember after he read the script, he thought I was going to write the part of Django for him, and I think maybe I even half hinted that that's what I was going to do early on in the beginning, but then the character just became younger as I was writing it. So I called him up on the phone and I go, okay, so you read it, huh? Yeah, I read it. I go, okay, so I think you kind of realize that you might be a little too old to play Django. Yeah, I kind of noticed that. So what do you think about Steven, playing Steven? Steven? You mean, what do I think about playing the most despicable black SOB in the history of cinema? Yeah, I'm all good with that. I'm already in it, man. I want to do my hair this way, and I want to do this and that and the other. I'm already in it.
So you two have that connection in terms of doing that.
Yeah.
But the question of race, which you bring up so strongly in Django, is also here, but a little more subtextually than it was there.
I mean, it wasn't my intention to, I'm going to really deal with racial matters of today, but via the context of this Western that takes place, 150 years ago. But in the course of writing it, it just started kind of coming out. And I remember after the Walton Goggins character and the Sam Jackson character have their big political debate in the Stagecoach, once it was over, I was actually surprised at how, because I've always felt that the Confederacy is like an American version of the Nazis or the Cossacks. Yet, I try not to judge my characters that way. So I was actually even surprised that Chris Maddox ended up coming up with some eloquent defense, for the Confederacy to some degree or another. And I was actually surprised because that's not how I feel. So literally, when I wrote his defense, I was like kind of surprised and shocked that I actually wrote something that I didn't think was contemptible about this character that I thought was contemptible, at least at that point in the story. And I was like, oh, wow. And then it hit me, wow, this is almost kind of a blue state, red state Western, which is very reflective of our time right now. And a lot of prognosticators have said that we are living in a time that's probably the most divided time in America's history since the Civil War and the post-Civil War period. But the interesting thing about that, and we can get more back to the race, and I'm happy to, but an interesting thing about that, and as far as cinema is concerned, the Western has always been a really interesting genre I think there's no other genre that reflects the decade in which it was made more than the Westerns made during particular decades. And
Like The Searchers.
Yeah, The Searchers. Yeah. Well, a good example is the 50s, because probably the time when the Westerns were the most popular. They reflected an Eisenhower ideal of America. They reflected a perceived American exceptionalism. All right, having won the World War II, and even the prosperity of America at that time. And they took Western heroes and built them up as demigods, whether it be even outlaws like Bully the Kid or Jesse James and the stories that were told at that period of time. And then obviously characters like Buffalo Bill or Wyatt Earp. But then if you look at the Westerns of the 70s and the very, very late 60s, that was a very cynical time in America. And America had lost trust in itself and had lost trust in its heroes. And actually, the cynicism of movies back then actually confirmed Americans' right to feel cynical about their time period. And the Westerns reflected that. And if you just, look no further than Tyrone Power's Jesse James compared to Robert Duvall's Jesse James in the Great Northfield, Minnesota Raid, or Burt Lancaster's Wyatt Earp in Gunfight at the OK Corral compared to Harris Yulin's Wyatt Earp in Doc. And it's just a very cynical time. And that reflected the time. And without really trying to, I think I ended up tapping into that with The Hateful Eight.
The other thing that's happening too, there's many things happening in it, but Jennifer Jason Leigh's character is basically the only major female character in this movie. And she comes in there and we don't know what to think about it. We are confused about it.
Yeah.
But she gets punched around, she gets hit a lot. So some people have said, well, why are you doing that? Why are you doing it? What is it that made you so interested in Daisy?
Well, part of the way that the story works with these 8 characters is, and it's actually part of, I think, even the driving motor of the movie, is that, and even almost a theory I have when it comes to suspense, at least in my movies, is the threat of violence is hanging over all the characters. And you know what's going to happen. You just don't know when, and you don't know who, and you don't know how. But you know it's going to be bad, and it's going to be brutal. And the idea that I would subject 7 of my characters to that, but wouldn't subject the 8th character to that because she's a woman is just absolutely, utterly ridiculous. That, and not only is it ridiculous, it is actually, to me, offensive to a woman's right to play any kind of character she wants. My conception of starting her off is that she was like a Manson girl out west. She was Susan Atkins. And I don't think, and even though it's not clear exactly what Daisy did, the why there's a $10,000 bounty on her head, and she's wanted for murder, and they're going to hang her in the town of Red Rock, but I don't think there's any doubt that she's guilty. But the thing about it is, your viewpoint is supposed to change. There are moments early on in the movie where John Ruth, the character Kurt Russell plays, who's the bounty hunter who's taking her to the hangman's rope, he's very brutal to her right at the beginning of the movie. And it's shocking to the audience. And it's meant to shock the audience. It's meant to, it's not played for laughs. It's played for harshness. And that first time he hits her with the butt of that gun, you feel a ripple go through the audience about how brutal he is towards her. And you're meant to think that John Ruth is a brutal bastard, that he would do that. And you almost can't help but be on her side to some degree or another after she gets that treatment. Now, as you watch the movie and more aspects about his character and her character are revealed, maybe you feel differently about it. Maybe you don't. But there's also weird dichotomies going on. On the other hand, John Ruth is a bounty hunter, and she's wanted dead or alive. He could shoot her at any time he wants. And every other character in the movie makes it clear that's exactly what they would do. They would just shoot her ass dead and attach her to the roof of the stagecoach with the other dead bodies that are up there, and that would be that. So it's not black and white. It's not really clear.
I've heard you're saying you got 10 movies in you, and this is it after 10?
That's kind of...
What are you talking about, Quentin?
Well, that's kind of the idea. I mean, look, I'll give myself a little wiggle room. It could be 11, but I doubt it's going to be. But I doubt it's going to be 12 or 13 or 14. You know, I don't want to be a director that just directs because he doesn't know anything else to do, and he needs to be on the set or he needs the attention, and I'm working to diminishing capabilities, diminishing talent, diminishing focus.
I don't see any evidence of that.
Well, I'm still a young man, all right? There better not be any evidence.
2 movies left, maybe 3. That's not enough.
Yeah, but I mean, but almost the very thing you said about, wow, it's a real exciting aspect that when you come out with a movie. Well, I don't want to be doing this when it becomes a more passé thing. And I'm not talking about other directors. They can do what they want, and I feel a little foolish talking about stuff like that standing next to Ridley Scott at some round table, all right, when he's doing tremendous work. At the same time, I do like the idea of 10 and done. I do like the idea of not passing over into another period of my career per se due to age and longevity and length. I like the idea that there is an umbilical cord connected to my first film all the way to my last, and then that is the body of work, because I am about my filmography. And frankly, I do feel that a bad film on the filmography affects good films.
But do you feel that about your films? Are you feeling
no, I don't
bad
feel
about
that. No, I don't
because
feel
you're
that
feeling
way.
a good umbilical cord line.
I'm good right now. I want to keep good right now, and I do like the idea of leaving you wanting a little bit more rather than.
What are you going to be doing, Quentin?
Well, I'm a writer.
So you could write. You could write.
Absolutely. I can write plays. I could write plays and direct plays. And I might do that before we get to number 10. I could do. I can write novels.
This could be a play.
I might very well turn it into
Reservoir
a play.
Dogs could be a play.
I might very well turn that into a
a
play.
play, yeah.
You know? And I might write a new play sometime. But write novels, write cinema books. I could totally do that. I mean, I think ever since Kill Bill, there has been a veer towards the more literary when it comes to my work. And, also, this is a tremendous amount of focus to put a career in movies to be the most important thing in your life, and everything else is secondary, including wives, including children.
You don't have those two things.
I don't, because I've created a world where this is what I'm doing. This is the
So
time
maybe
to
there'll
do
be
it.
room for those.
After that period of time, yeah, and and by the way, it's not it's not a piddling little appearance. I mean, it's like by that period of time, the way it usually takes me to make a movie, I would be 60 more or less. All right, there would be 10 films, or that would be about 30 years as far as a career. Well, that's a wonderful career, especially if I can keep it up to the level that I've been working at. And I do like the idea of, like I said, leaving you wanting a little bit more.
They're going to pull you out of here. So we end always in song. Last time you sang for me, it was a song from Inglourious Basterds called The Man in the Big Sombrero.
The Man in the Big Sombrero,
Man
yeah.
in the Big Sombrero, we did that. Now you have a Roy Orbison song in this, you have other things. Is there something in your head you can do for me?
I thought you were going to sing the
No,
song.
I'll sing it with you if you do it. I don't sing it.
Okay.
I guessed. You quizzed me. You said you wouldn't sing that song for me unless I could tell you what movie it was from. I told you it was Hi Diddle Diddle with Adolphe Menjou. June Havoc sang it in the movie, so you were forced to do it.
That was pretty impressive.
It
I gotta
was impressive,
say.
yes.
Okay, I will. I'll sing the. Actually, okay, I will do the Roy Orbison song. Listen to me, people. Try and understand. You may be a soldier, woman, child, or man, but there won't be many coming home. No, there won't be many coming home. There may be 20, maybe 10, maybe none, but there won't be many coming home.
Whoa, let Star Wars beat that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, forget that.
American Idol, here I come.
Here he comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Clint. That was great.
Always a pleasure.
That was great.
Well, well, frankly, to tell you the truth, where that shot just first starts is the fact that I had came across an old photograph, and I think that photograph was set in like Czechoslovakia or Poland or something, and it looked exactly like that. It looked like it was all weathered, and it was in a big snowfield, and it had this huge canopy of snow covering it. So I thought that was a really, really great image, and I thought it was a fantastic image for a spaghetti western kind of thing. It seemed very spaghetti western, and I even remember in the script when I wrote it, because I described it. So I describe. You say the Christ is the cross is stone, the Christ is wood, and he doesn't look like the hippie savior of Catholicism. He looks closer to Eisenstein's Ivan the Terrible. All right, he's very pointy, all right, and very Slavic. And the idea behind it was as if Vikings, 1,000 years ago, all right, came up to the hills of Wyoming, chiseled a cross out of a rock, carved a savior out of a tree, stuck it in Wyoming, and then went back to Norway. So it's like that the idea was that cross has been there before America even was here. It's just always been there. But then the thing is, so that's why I did it. Now, once you put it in a movie and you wrap an entire movie around behind it, now you have, and now it gets other meanings way beyond that photograph, or way even beyond that shot. It seems now like, well, this is such a brittle, broken land that, God is useless by this point in time. It's a godless land. Even Christ is dying. Even Christ is shriveled up into, Christ the Terrible. All right, on that cross.
This is why he's the greatest storyteller working in cinema today, ladies and gentlemen.
So that was also sort of the first 70 millimeter porn moment, I think, in the film, where it's just like clearly, it's like, I've got this vast canvas, I'm going to make a beautiful picture. How do you conceive those? I mean, do you sketch those out?
That was a big deal, though. That was like, I wanted one kind of drop dead shot in the course of the movie.
You got a few.
I did my best, but I wanted one real big deal shot that you could put Morricone's score, his theme playing over it. You could play the credits over it, and you're not waiting for story. It's just about luxuriating in this shot. I'm trying to knock you out right from the very, very beginning. And we kept waiting for us to get a zoom lens, but we ended up never getting a zoom lens during the course of the entire movie. So we had to do it with a crane. And that was one of those crazy days where you're trying to do something, and it had to be snowing while it was happening, or it wouldn't work. And so what happened was, so we go and we do our first take of it, and we're doing it, and it was maybe a little too long. We're doing it, but then we don't know if we're ever going to get another one because the snow could stop at any moment. And then the horses ran out of gas. They literally just ran out of gas before they got up to the cross. So we had to do it all over again. And when I say the horses ran out of gas, you don't put the stagecoach in reverse and drive it back. We had to unhitch the horses, take them all the way around to get them to that very first point. We had to take the stagecoach, put it on a truck, take it all the way hell and back to get to the first point. Then we had to cover the entire trail so you can see that we had already done it once before. And we're killing ourselves, and that snow could stop at any moment. At any moment, and we would have just been fucked. And I just remember telling the grips who were just killing themselves and pulling it off, I go, guys, this could be the best shot of my career if we get it. So I know everyone is working their hardest, but let's get it done.